Evening to everybody, and thanks for coming on the chat tonight. I, I suppose you've all been aware of the last couple of weeks and this campaign to tackle dementia in football, and so the obvious question is how does that affect you and the teams which you coach? And just a quick bit about myself, for those of you who don't know me, my first club actually was Horsford, believe it or not, and everything was downhill from there. I played for Norwich City and Blackburn, Chelsea, Celtic, and finished off at Aston Villa. I had an 18-year professional career, and stopped playing now, of course, and I work in the media, and I write for the Daily Mail, who have had this, whether you like the Mail or not. This has been a really excellent campaign which they have been doing to tackle dementia in football, and it's a subject very, very close to my heart because my dad, who was a former player at Norwich, Chester City and Carlisle, he is suffering badly from dementia, and he's not. It doesn't look like it's going to last much longer. He's had it for the best part of a decade. He's 76 now, and he's in a really horrific condition. He's in a care home. And for those of you who would have had relatives or know somebody who's had dementia, it's not just about forgetting your car keys. It's not about mislaying your wallet. That may be the start of it, and it gets progressively worse. And the situation isn't just about the sufferer of dementia. It's about the effect it has on the family, and the effect it had on my mum was so great because she couldn't cope anymore. It's 24 hours a day. My dad was a danger to her. He was a danger to himself. He'd go missing from the house. She had to lock him in. He'd become extremely dangerous with things. He couldn't toilet properly, and anyway, so his ended up in a care home, and it's a pretty desperate situation. I don't know whether any of you are aware of the study which was done by the University of Glasgow by Willie Stewart, and the results which came out of that study. He tested, I think it was roughly 24,000 people of the general population, and he found that I think it was about 8,000 footballers. They tested the brains, and and he came out with the numbers that you are 3.5 times more likely, if you had played football, to suffer from neurodegenerative disease, which is dementia, Alzheimer's, motor neuron disease, or Parkinson's. Now, I think that is a pretty alarming stat in itself. Subsequently, because of the Mail campaign over the last couple of weeks, I think you would have all been aware of Nobby Stiles' death, and there's a number of the England 66 World Cup team who have died. There was a stat that of the players who played in the first division in the 1965-66 seasons, 42% of top flight players have died from dementia or died or suffered from neurodegenerative disease. That's nearly 1 in 2. And there is, I think, a lot of the misconceptions are that they were heavier balls back then, which isn't actually true. And the fact that the balls moved slower back then, with today's balls, they move a lot quicker. Now, I'm not a scientist, and I'm in touch with the guy Willie Stewart north of the border who tells me all these things. I don't claim to know everything. I'm just a bit of a mouthpiece, giving my opinion on things and telling you what I know. But the fact of the matter is, the balls which we use today, and because of the force and because of how fast they move, it's exactly the same force as it was 60 years ago. So heading the ball will have exactly the same damage as years ago. And it is not just an old person's disease. In recent weeks, I don't know whether you saw in the Mail at the weekend, Gordon Cowan's a player who many of you would probably well know. Really talented footballer, 61. He's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Gary Pallister, a household name, Manchester United, brilliant defender, which he was. There was a really good article in the paper where he's really concerned about his situation. The article said that he drove into the village where he lived and he walked home. He forgot that he'd left his car in the village. And there were other stories like that. A guy I played against for Southampton, and a guy called Kevin Moore, 48 years old. He went for a family picnic and he didn't know how to sit down. He died at 55 from dementia. And these are horrific stories. And it's horrific for the family, and it's horrific for everybody. Now, there needs to be more testing, and I think we all understand that. And with more testing, I think there will be clearer results. But what I'm here to sort of explain tonight, and in the end, this is, it's up to you what you do. But with the charter which the Daily Mail have set up, I think there are two really keen or really crucial points, I should say, of the charter, which will affect you and your clubs. And the first point would be that most of the heading, which there is in football, is done on the training ground or in training. Sometimes in games, you'll only know too well yourselves. Your centre halves will head more balls than maybe the wingers or whatever. But what we've come up with, what I've come up with a guy from the Mail, and this is on Willie Stewart's advice, the guy who knows about the effect that dementia and heading a ball has on people, was for a maximum of 20 headers per session in training and a minimum of 48 hours between sessions. So this isn't me concocting that out of nowhere. This is what the guy who knows, the professor north of the border, is advising us to do. And what this is a preventative measure. Now, many of you have probably played football yourselves. This isn't, let me be clear with this. This isn't just about professional players. This is about amateur players. This is about all levels of players. My sons play local football, and I've had this discussion with them. And what we are saying is just lessen the load, reduce the risk by doing less. I've mentioned I played 18 years, and at a low estimate, this is a really low estimate. I did a calculation. If I headed 80 balls a week, which is really low, and I played for 40 weeks of the year, so 3 months off, which I probably played for longer than that, times 18, that's in the region of 60,000 blows to my head, which I have taken. Now, so what we're saying with this charter, which we've set up, is why don't we just reduce the risk? Had I known back then what I know now about the effects of heading a football has on the brain because of the testing then, and the results which have already come out, then there is no way, when I was a young player coming up through my teenage years, and my dad used to take me to Helston High School and cross balls in, and I used to go and attack it, and it was ball after ball after ball, and it was important I improved my technique. And I think we all understand about the importance of of practice. When I went to Norwich City as a youth team player, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday afternoons, ball after ball, kicked up from the keeper. I was a centre half as well. I could play a number of positions, but all the back four used to practice heading. Ball skied up, go and attack it, head it. And as I say, nowadays, I'd have just simply said to the coach, I'm not doing that. I'm absolutely not doing that because of what I know. Now, so that's a major factor. And I think it's a common sense factor where we are just saying do less through the training. I spoke to Chris before you all came on tonight about the second point, and a really important point. I think you would have all maybe seen or been aware of the Jimenez David Luiz head clash last night, which was horrific. Raul Jimenez has fractured his skull, and he got carried off on a stretcher, went to hospital. David Luiz at the side of the pitch had his head taped up. There was blood seeping from his head. Actually, when he went back onto the pitch, he played. The head clash was after 5 minutes. He played 40 minutes, another 40 minutes, and came off at half time. Now, I'm not here to be critical about the Arsenal medical staff and the doctors, but something about that doesn't seem quite right to me, that they have a few minutes at the side of the pitch, they test him, and or they say they tested him, and I'm not disputing that, and he goes back on. The fact he came off at half time tells you everything that you need to know. So through this charter, the other thing which we really are pushing for is for immediate ratification of temporary concussion replacements. Now, that will probably, this is about in the professional game, but the point I'm making where I think it is really relevant to you is that head injuries in youth football, as you all would do, you have to treat them really seriously. But it's only with incidents such as which happened last night and the coverage which it gets, which really hits it home. So, with the youth football, just to, really think about, which I'm sure you all do anyway, about health first, health for the youngsters first. And do you know what? You can end up losing a game because whatever happens, if you don't have enough substitutes and you're a man down, but the health of the kids, is far more important. And there was also some interesting studies which came out about female players, and that they seem to be more susceptible to head injury than male players. This was a report which was done last week. And the last thing, I was speaking to a guy who's trying to make, not trying to make, he's developed this gum shield where you can you get the results from heading a football data wise that you put a chip in a gum shield, and they use these in rugby. They're not yet used in football, but you get the results from the amount of times you head the ball, or you have a collision, and it's data at the side of the pitch. And there's a thing called the red zone which you get into, which is where you have to come off, and they are developing this. They're taking it to clubs around the country. The interesting thing which he said to me, which I didn't know, and as I say, I'm not the scientist. I went to Horsford First School and Horsford Middle School. That's why I'm not the scientist. But that if you saw the collision between David Luiz and Raul Jimenez last night, there was the same amount of force for both players. Now, many of you would say, well, I knew that. I actually didn't realize that. I didn't know that. So it was the same effect on both players. Obviously, Jimenez came off a lot worse. But it's little things like that which I find I'm still learning. And I'm clearly not an expert on everything, but I'm just relaying what I'm told to you, what I've been told, or try and relay it to you, so you can make a really balanced judgment on how you want to train going forward. So with regards to head knocks, I think it's common sense to just think about the player, and you have to go through. I know you all have to. You all have to do your I forget what it's called now. You have to take a medical.
Yeah, we do our first aid training, which has got
first aid
guidelines in. So yeah,
that's it. And secondly, just with the training, just do less. Nobody's looking to take heading out of the game. Maybe in years to come, that will be a discussion which we have further down the line. But I do think that will be in years to come. But at this moment in time, I would say this to you. that nothing's going to save my dad from dying of dementia. There's a good chance. I'd say there's a good chance, but there is a real chance, and this is the thing which frustrates me, that or has frustrated me in the past, because this campaign, which is gathering momentum now, this campaign has been going on for 20 years. Dawn Astle, the daughter of Jeff Astle, who died, I think 2001. He was 59. He choked to death in front of his family. She has been campaigning ferociously for 20 years to try and get people to wake up to the reality of the situation of heading footballs and the effect that it can have, on players' health. It's as simple as that. John Stiles, Nobby Stiles' son, he's been another campaigner. And what's happened what has happened is that every sort of 5 or 6 months, another high-profile player will come out, as Bobby Charlton sadly was diagnosed very, very recently, and everybody will sit up and then say, well, we need to do something about this, and then it dies away. And a lot of journalists have been really brilliant with their writing and backed the campaign, but there hasn't been the will within football. Now, in the last couple of weeks, we've seen Premier League managers really get behind this campaign. We've seen Frank Lampard talk about adjusting his training techniques with regards to heading a football. So I think it is gathering momentum, and all I'm doing is I'm here tonight. I'm glad you're listening to this, and I'm just saying to you, I think this is a common sense practice. I don't want to damage my children's health, and I've taken my kids down the parks and in the back garden and practice heading with them. But with what I know now, there is absolutely no way I will be getting involved in that at all with them, because I care about their health. Now, I'm not saying don't do anything. I'm saying you all have your different training techniques and regimes, and techniques are important. But if you stick to this charter and you stick to these guidelines, then there's not just a strong possibility, but a real likelihood that further down the line, your kids and future generations will not be affected, as my generation will be. And of course, my father's generation has been. So that's all I've got to say. I know there's a lot of waffle in there, but I hope you understood the point. There are 7 points to this charter. The first 4 are to do with the footballing authorities and finance and respite care. That's a sort of separate issue. The 5th one is about recognising dementia as an industrial disease. That's separate. It's the last 2 which are really interesting. And as Chris said, you've got your first aid qualifications. I know that, and maybe I was just trying to enforce, because of the horror situation which there was last night, my feelings on the importance of just really taking care with head knocks. But it's the last one which I think is one which really we should all think about addressing. That's my opinion, but you can implement it how you see how you see it.
Yeah, no, thanks, Chris, for that. So I know Wroxham have adopted the charter so far, haven't they? And my club, Horsford, have, and there's been several others around the country as well. I know Leiston have. The charter, you can find it in full on your Twitter page, and if you search the Daily Mail's website, that's there as well, I believe. So if you do want to read it more in depth, you can there. I've got a couple of questions that have come through on the chat if you want to, happy to run through them. So the first one's from Karen, and her son coaches in America. In America, they don't allow headering of the ball until the player's 11 years of age at all. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yes, interesting. I saw Wayne Rooney, because his kids were out in America, and he said they weren't allowed to head. But the guidelines in England, I believe, are no heading for under 12s?
Under 12 in training, yeah.
Dawn Astle is really livid about this, because she said they are guidelines. So it still leaves that open to interpretation. There should be an actual ban. I think the interesting part of this is is that coach education, and you're all coaches, is so important, because naturally I suspect we're all the same. We are all super competitive, but there will be coaches out there who, off the back of children not practicing heading when they're younger, think that we need to overload when they're going through the teenage years, and because they haven't done it before. I think that's a natural thought process. But what I would say to that is, don't do it. Follow the guidelines, follow the instruction, and limit the heading to 20 headers per session. And then I suppose naturally that you would have 48 hours. I don't know how many times you train a week, so I may be wrong, but I wouldn't have thought too many of you train back-to-back days, so you would naturally have that rest period.
Yeah.
If I could just say, in America, they don't head it at all. Games, it's just not part of the game for the youngsters. So I don't. My point was, I know we do some of the other things over there. Do you think we should go further for the little ones?
It's a really interesting question. I think it's unnecessary when kids are young to head a ball. I don't see what the upside is, and that's the thing about this chart. But there is no downside to this, other than looking after your kids. You wouldn't tell your kids to smoke, so why would you tell them to head a ball 50 times in a session? At this moment in time, I haven't. The people who I've spoken to, there isn't the thought about taking. We're not trying to get heading banned from the game. This is a really interesting thing. I think we're all here because we love football, but Dawn Astle doesn't. I've spoken to her. I don't think she wants heading banned for the game. I don't think John Stiles does. We just want the authorities to sit up, recognise, take notice, and put far more into the research so things can become clearer. But in the meantime, just take preventative measures, and that's all we're trying to do with this. And I'm glad it's gathering momentum and gathering pace. And every day there are more and more people. There are more and more stories, people coming out, and I think that and I can only speak from my own personal experience here with my dad and my mum, is there was certainly a feeling from my mum that there was an embarrassment. It was an embarrassment for the family that he had dementia, and he was. I don't know whether any of you knew my dad. He was a teacher at Helsden High School, but he was never a swearer. If I swore as a boy, honestly, I'd be for the high jump. And that was a feature of his dementia, where he started to swear, and my mum would feel embarrassed by that, and we'd all feel embarrassed by that as a family. And it's something which I think nowadays, or in the last couple of weeks, families are actually realizing the importance of coming forward, however difficult it is, and telling their stories, because it hits home to people that it's not just an old person's disease. It absolutely isn't an old person's disease, and we've seen the cases coming out now. So that's something which I think, of course, it's a negative, because nobody wishes dementia or Alzheimer's or motor neuron disease or Parkinson's on anybody. But what it is doing is it's opening the eyes of the footballing world up and saying, blimey, this is worse than we thought. This is much worse than we thought. So let's deal with it. And as I say, this isn't going to affect that generation. It's not going to affect my generation. I've been baffled. I've been gobsmacked by the fact I've said to players over the last couple of seasons, players who I played with, why don't you back this campaign? Because the reality is, in 15, 20 years, we're going to be sitting there, and some of us will have dementia and Alzheimer's, and our families will be saying, why on earth didn't we do something about it back then? Why didn't we take it seriously? Why didn't we, fund research? Why didn't we lessen headers in training? Why didn't we have temporary concussion replacements? That's what will happen. So I'm hoping now we're actually getting to the point where everybody sees what is happening, and we can try and do something about it to protect our kids, the current generation of footballers, and younger generations to come. It's about time we all wised up. That's my opinion.
Cool. One of the other questions we have from Andy is, could we end up in a position similar to boxing where we have headgear?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And Andy, I've already made the point. I'm certainly not a scientist. There are far more qualified people than me to answer that. I think it's an impossible one for me to answer. I think if we knew that it would be, it would actually help lessen the impact. I'm not so sure that is the case, though. I think it's a really interesting what has come out the last couple of months about the footballs. And if you follow a guy called Willie Stewart, who is the professor in Glasgow, he has been tweeting stuff out regularly. Gary Pallister, Kevin Moore, and pictures of them with modern footballs, because everybody was just linking dementia with the big, heavy leather balls, and that isn't the case. It's to do, and I failed my physics exam anyway. I got a D in physics, but it's to do with the force of the ball, the velocity of the ball and the force at impact, and that's what it's to do with, and it's the same, and that has never changed.
Okay, and this one's from Dan. So a suggestion that he's seen in the future is that the FA or leagues could implement banning goalkeepers from kicking in their hands in the foundation phase. So the foundation phase is what we class as under 7s to under 11s. As well as the benefits from avoiding header in the ball, that travelling that fast, it's in line with the FA's DNA, and also encourages teams to play out from the back and through the thirds and give more touches to the younger players. Is that something that rings true?
Yeah, and that's something we had the meeting on Friday, the Zoom meeting, which didn't touch on. I think that is, a really good way to look at things. We want our kids to be the best possible players. It's not all about winning at the young age. We want their skill levels to be the best they possibly can, which is why, playing out from the back, telling kids to, take a risk at times or whatever, teaching them how to play properly, get on the half turn and talking about the body shape, looking over the shoulders, they will benefit from that rather than just facing forward, punt down the pitch, kids fighting for a ball, get on the second one, knock down football. In years to come, as they get older, it is about winning as they get older, and I accept that. But there are levels. When the kids are young, I think it's about educating them, and the games are important because there's a competitive element to them. But it's certainly not all about winning. It's about developing them, and you're trying to make the kids into the best possible players, which they can be. So the younger you can start them, teaching them how to play and how to move and how to pass the ball simply, then the better for everybody. Short corners is something else. I know they do that in the US. It's all about short corners, not loading it into the box. And the kids have got used to not heading a ball in the US.
Okay. Another one from Michael Richardson. So obviously at the minute the guidelines are for 12s and under to not head during training. Would that make a difference if the age was raised any higher, up to 18s?
Yeah. Again, I'm not. I'm not the right person to ask about this, other than what I've discussed with Willie Stewart.
Yeah.
I think that that a lot of coaches, and I've touched on this earlier, will have the thought process that heading is part of the game. We need to do some. All this process is about is just being sensible with what you do. it's as simple as that. I mean, maybe, as I say, maybe in years to come, the more which comes out, then maybe further down the line, heading will be banned. But at this moment in time, we're just saying, just do less.
Yeah.
Just do less. Don't do as much. I can honestly say, from my point of view, with my children coming up through the teenage years, I would not give them repetitive heading drills. I would rather that they learnt it while they were playing competitive games than actually Tuesday night punting balls up, hitting corners in, go and attack it. One after the other, repetition, balls fired in, blows to the head. I wouldn't do it now. That's my personal choice based on what I know. But what I do know that is what Professor Willie Stewart has given me is the guideline, and he's just saying just no more than 20 in a session. And if you do 20, make sure that you have a minimum 48-hour recovery period, so things can settle down.
Remember when we discussed in the call with all the Horsford coaches the other night, we said that more than 20 headers in a session or in a row was almost the equivalent of being concussed.
Yeah, and that's the whole point. Is that what it's the game is turning to, where all becomes about overload and winning and being ultra competitive. I think that there can be a balance there. That's my view. I think that there can be a reasonable balance, and we're learning all the time. I'm learning from this. I don't worry myself, and a lot of you are my age who would have played football as well 2 or 3 times a week, and we're probably all in the same boat with this. That's the truth. It'd be interesting to know how many people on the Zoom tonight have. I suspect the fact that you're all coaches, you would have all played football heavily and been involved and had heading drills and lots of practices. And the other one, I don't know whether any of you have been knocked out or heavily concussed and been in a situation where you go down. I've never known a player, I was like it myself, when a physio came on and asked me if I was okay, who actually ever said I'm not okay. Because it was like a macho thing. I think it still is. Nobody wants to come off and be seen as I think it's fair to say, as teammates would think you're a coward doing that. These things really do need to change. And I think that, it's our responsibility to make a change and to make informed decisions. And that's, my view has totally changed. What I thought back then to what I think now. But it's changed because I know the impact that it has had on my life, my family's life, lots of other families who I know. And as sure as eggs are eggs, it will carry on happening at these rates unless we do something about it. Now we have a chance to protect our kids. So let's try and do something about it.
Yep. Another one that's just come in is something also related to my dad actually just saying, thanks for educating on the old heavy ball myth. I'm 64 and grew up with heavy leather balls and with laces, and when they were wet, they did seem to be very heavy. Didn't realise even with the lighter ball, it's the velocity that does the damage and not the weight. And then in relation to that, Georgie's just said, having a lighter ball or a softer ball in training, would that make a difference when it comes to practice and getting that technique right?
But it's interesting, that one, because I think it was in the Telegraph a couple of weeks ago about Ajax using softer balls. Again, I'm not an expert at this. I'd love to know the science behind it. It does seem like a common sense approach. That's something, Chris, which I'll actually look into. And I'll get back to you on that. I have to say, with regards to the heavier ball, that's what the heavier ball, but the balls back when my dad used to play, that was something which I absolutely thought. And it was only through Willie Stewart and the education and him telling me that I found out that it was a myth. So, I'm glad that I can actually relay that to you and everybody on here tonight.
So it's just a couple of statements from people. So Gilby said most coaches are ex-players and they should have the empathy to make health paramount from now on. And I think most people will agree with that. And one of the final ones that's come through is from Kirsty and says, "How can clubs adopt the charter, please, and what do they need to do?"
Well, with regarding adopting the charter, I think that it's down to the individual clubs to do so. And the charter is, the Daily Mail charter was sevenfold. And as I say, the first four points were about sort of funding and helping with the care. The fifth point about industrial disease. I think it's the last 2 points, which we've spoken about there. The real duty of care that we all have with head injuries, enormous point, but we would all be aware of that. But just really to emphasise that it's, it's not about winning the game. If a kid goes down with, and you're not sure, don't take the risk. But that anyway. It's that, and it's the reduction in in heading in training, which I believe will make a change. I mean, it's common sense. If I headed the ball for 18 years at the low end, 60,000 blows to my head, that can't. I'm just and I'm not a medical expert. That can't do me any good. Now, if I'd have headed 10,000 balls, I don't know what's going to happen in years to come, but there's probably a better chance that I'd have been, I'd have had a better chance heading 10,000 balls to 60,000 balls. That's, that's basic maths. That's common sense. And that's all I'm saying to you. And, it's up to you with your individual clubs to make your own informed decisions. But I'm, relaying all this back from the experts. So, and I hope that, you all take on board. If I'm honest, I hope you all take on board what I say. And it's not for me to say, do the right thing. That's for all you to make that decision yourselves. But, I would, think the common sense thing to do is lessen the load and don't put your kids at risk.
Okay. I've just put a final shout for any final questions, but I think we could well be there. And I think, thank you again for your time, Chris. Been a pleasure. I think Dan was asking, is that a Premier League golden boot behind you?
Oh, there is one. Yeah. And what I would say to, to everybody on the Zoom call tonight, Chris has my number. I'm happy for Chris to give my number out. If you want to chat anytime, or if I can help you and your clubs in any way, I'm really more than happy to do so. As I say, I don't know everything. I really don't know everything. I'm just trying to relay what I've been told, what I do know, and just trying to get across the importance of getting these measures in place.
Okay. Hopefully that's it from everyone. But once again, thanks, Chris, for your time. And clubs, if you need anything from me, please just drop me an email. You've all got access to my email address. But hopefully enjoy football again this weekend, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye. Cheers, Chris. Thank you.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you.